Today I'm with Danny Gomez. He is one of our youth directors at Tree of Life, TOL Kids. He's been serving, he's been with the church for 8 years. But one of the things about Danny is that he's an incredible athlete. He loves sports. So today we're going to talk about discipleship and sports. And so, Danny, thank you for hanging out with me today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, so we had a really good conversation just yesterday, actually, about sports, and I was asking you some questions because youth sports are a big deal. And so before we get into now, let's talk about then. Let's talk about how you grew up. You have a process that you went through with baseball. So when did that start for you? Let's get it. We're just diving right in, right? Like,
Well, according to my parents, it started as soon as I started walking.
Yeah.
They talk about all the time that as soon as you started walking, you were carrying a baseball bat around. Like, we knew you were a baseball player. And I started playing, 3, 4 years old, T-ball, and I played, in the leagues. And then right away, I was 9 years old when I first jumped into like travel ball, which was, select travel ball.
Yeah.
And I did that for all the way through high school. Ended up getting quite a few full ride scholarship offers to, some junior colleges and things like that. And I ended up going and taking a scholarship, playing college baseball for a few years, transferred, bounced back and forth to different colleges. I faced some injuries and stuff. And I finally got hurt enough to where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to hang it up. But
How old were you when that happened?
I was 21, which is funny because I thought I was too old at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, I was about to be 22, and they told me I needed surgery again, and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. I'm already too old, and I regretted that for a while.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I was not too old, but at that moment, I just didn't have that love and passion anymore for it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. I mean, it was.
For sure. So let's talk about the pros, man. Let's talk about what that looked like because you were obviously good enough to get a full ride. You got a full ride, which is very rare. So you were pretty good. So it started early. You had a gift. You were noticed. You did select all that. What was the discipline like? I mean, what was the cadence? How often were you practicing games, tournaments? What did that look like? And it started early, so there was a lot of that happening. Is it daily?
Let's just say baseball was my life.
Yeah. So it was your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the best way to explain it. I remember being 9 and these coaches came to the house and they brought like these paperwork and stuff and they told my parents, hey, we want Danny to play. And my parents were like, we ain't got money for that.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, in their eyes, that I was good enough I didn't have to pay. So I never had to pay for select baseball, luckily. But that was something that my parents were like, no, we're not paying. We didn't have money growing up.
Sure.
And but then right then and there, we were training all the time. My dad would get home from work. Man, I remember my dad getting home so tired, like the days that he didn't work out of town. He'd come home and I'd be ready. Like, hey, Pops. He's like, vamos,
Yeah.
And he did it. And it didn't matter how tired he was or whatever. He would go out to the side. We had a big field on the side of our house, and he'd go out there, hit me a bunch of ground balls and, fly balls. And that was, if it wasn't with my dad, it was a daily thing with my cousins.
Yeah.
We all lived in the same neighborhood, and we were out there every single day. And that's the thing about baseball. It's all about repetition.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're doing it with your little brother, your dad, a professional baseball player, just your cousins, with yourself. It's all about repetition, and the more you get comfortable doing it, it becomes second nature, and that's what it did. Baseball was second nature to me. I will, that's all it was. I felt like I breathe, sleep, eat baseball. Like that was all I thought about.
Yeah. So, man, I grew up. Baseball was my favorite sport growing up. I remember watching Sandlot, and I just fell in love with the sport.
Yeah, my favorite movie.
Yeah, even as a kid, bro, Sandlot was a picture of my life. Like in terms of, I was the one that was gathering all the players. We would play at the field.
You were Benny.
I was Benny, bro. I was like, hey, can you play? And I loved it, man. I loved baseball. I loved the equipment, the glove, having a good glove, the cleats, everything, bro. It was just like, I just loved it. And I did play it, but I didn't get to play on that level. But I just remember the sport itself. I just loved the game. It just has it's different than football and basketball. It was the one that, and even soccer. I played all those sports, but baseball was the one that stood out for me. I was a pitcher, and I really enjoyed it. So there's so many good things that come from sports, and we can highlight them. There's the discipline. There's learning how to. You can even state them, bro. What are all the pros when it comes to sports? Because there's a lot of fathers and mothers that have their kids in sports, and it's something that we, for whatever reason, we want our kids to be in sports. My daughter Selah is she's an athlete, man. Her favorite sport is soccer.
Right.
But she loves sports, and so and I love practicing with her. But what are some of the things that you would say, man? This is really good for kids to be in sports. Why would that be? Because you've been a coach before.
Right. I coached for a while, and I'm a huge believer. I tell people all the time, I'm like, or I have a friend that his son doesn't want to play baseball anymore. And I'm like, bro, it doesn't matter if he doesn't want to play baseball. You got to put him in a sport, or something where there's an instructor in a, a group setting, because it just teaches you discipline. It does. It teaches you how to listen. It teaches you how to respect your elders. Teaches you how to say yes, no. It teaches you how to win. Teaches you how to lose. Teaches you, it humbles you. And it teaches you how to work with others when things are going good and when things are going bad.
Right.
There's just so much that you get out of it, man. And I feel like that affects you later on. If you got a job, you get fired, it's like, man, I've been here. I've lost big, and it's okay. You bounce right back up. You got people around you that'll help you. And to me, that's like, that started because you were playing sports. You had teammates, you had brotherhood, sisterhood, things like that. And it can affect you in so many different areas of your life. I feel that sports are a huge, something positive.
Yeah, and I think competition is something that brings about greatness. I think that it's something in the Bible as well. There's a lot of competition. I don't think competition is bad. I think that it's used as a tool to train and to bring out the best in us, but it also can expose the things that need to be surrendered.
Right.
It could expose pride. And we've all seen people that take it too serious, whether it's, we're playing Monopoly, flipping tables, you know what I'm saying? And so I think it also exposes some weaknesses and it helps us develop our strengths. And so I agree with 100%, man. There's so many good things that are in sports. And so from the start, we got our girls into it. I was into sports when I was a kid, but it wasn't because my parents pushed it on us. It was because I wanted that. And so I do the same with my girls. I don't push them to anything. I want them to tell me what they want, or I'm going to watch them and guide them and use wisdom in leading them. So, sports is definitely a big deal in America. Baseball, football, basketball, those are the top three ones. They're everywhere. I mean, we got huge stadiums now that are being built in high school. It's almost everything's going pro. There's a lot of funding behind it, baseball as well, and it's in basketball. I mean, it's just a big deal, and so we have kids starting really early. And here's the thing: sports are a good thing, but they're not God,
Right.
and it's a horrible God. And so let's talk about that, bro. Like, obviously, you dedicated a lot of years to baseball, to sports. Your dad was a minister. When did he become a pastor? How old were you when he became a pastor?
I was 14.
Okay, so you were already really into sports. Your weekends were shot. You were always out traveling, the whole nine, right? So you became really, you bonded with your team, your teammates, your coaches, but it almost seems. Tell me about how you were able to connect with the church as he pastored and you were out doing your thing. Did you have a connection with the church?
Let me see. Yeah, I was raised in church, but
well, how did that happen, bro? How were you participating in church and then still playing that much baseball?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hindsight?
to be honest with you, it was more of a maybe once a month type deal, or every other weekend, or if a tournament got rained out.
Yeah.
then, it's like, hey, tournament got rained out. We're going to church. But, it's crazy because my parents always went to church. They would send me off with somebody.
Okay.
But I definitely missed out on a huge, important area of my life, I would say. Now, don't get me wrong. We still prayed at the house and, listen to worship music and things like that. And we still had Wednesday night services so that I got to still do that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot that I missed. There was a lot of the Sunday services, obviously, which is huge.
Yeah.
The connection with the rest of the youth or, anything like that. I've never been to a youth service or I've never been to a youth camp.
Okay.
So my brothers and sisters grew up going to youth camps. My cousins all went to youth camps and I hear these crazy cool stories like, oh, we had so much fun, blah, blah. I never went to one. So that just tells you how busy I was with that, sure. And youth services, that was super rare. So it definitely affected me, but not in a good way. Like I definitely missed out on baseball was a priority, and I don't think that was the intentions of my parents, obviously, but they were just trying to do what they thought was right.
Sure.
And that was, he's really good. Like let's keep him in it. We don't want to take that away from him. And I think that a lot of parents see it that way, right? Like, oh, he's good. He can be great, or he can get a scholarship. And but I think a lot of the times that we do it as parents, we do it more because we want it versus the kids,
and we want them to want it,
right?
Yeah.
And we push that on them because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of kids out there that are playing every weekend that if you were to just not even mention that there's a tournament, they wouldn't even ask you about it. Like, hey, are we playing this weekend?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like just they're only doing a lot of them are doing it because the parents are like, this is what you're doing, this is what it is. The parents are pushing it, and it's kind of like the way the world is going, right? So we fall into what the world is doing, and we want to be more like that. Well, everybody's doing it, and I think that's where we're starting to see that separation from God and sports and
So you see that separation because it happened with you growing up just subtly. It wasn't that your parents were trying to separate you from God,
right?
But it happened subtly, right?
Right. And I don't think that I always knew where I was, where my roots were. I always knew God first, right? I knew that, but I wasn't living that.
Yeah.
I always knew what I needed to come back to. I always knew what was important. I never stepped foot on a field without praying, ever. I always glorified God after everything. I had, I would write on my tape, on my wrist, and I would write 2 Bible verses. You know, Matthew 19:26, Colossians 3:23. So I felt that I was still glorifying God, right? Like I felt like I was still doing my part in, I'm being a Christian athlete, right? But to say that I had a relationship with God, like an actual legit one, right? Or to say that I truly understood that God came first. I mean, you're young, right? Like, and if all you're doing is playing ball, and that's what you think is what life is about.
You think it's about baseball.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's scary to think that we're raising our kids that way.
No, it is, bro. What I see just as a pastor, and we've had this conversation yesterday, and that's why I thought it would be good to have this podcast, because I think a lot of fathers a lot of parents really love sports. I mean, think about all year round. You have sports all year round. Right now, it's hockey, the finals, baseball. And the finals in basketball just finished, and the Mavericks lost, and so we were all gathered around that. So we gather around sports a lot. It creates community. There's so many good things. We enjoy it. It's entertainment, right? It's like a way to take off the edge of just winding down from the day. It's nice to watch a game. It's created a culture. We have a culture of sports. It's a big deal, but it's also funded heavily. I mean, it's a huge stadiums. It costs a lot of money to go to there, parking, all that, right? It's a big deal. And so inevitably what happens is that the things that we love, they're hobbies, they're passions, but they shouldn't be priority. I should not prioritize sports above work because work is important because that's how I feed my family. I shouldn't, you know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be priority over my marriage. I shouldn't be like, man, I'm all about the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys. My marriage is second. That's terrible. It shouldn't be that. It's in the fun category, and fun shouldn't be in front of family. It shouldn't be in front of my marriage, and it shouldn't be in front of God. The problem that I'm seeing with sports is that it becomes priority. It's like now it's Sunday's football season, all day Sunday. It's like there's a game starting at 10, and it goes all the way to the evening. It's the whole day. Saturday, if you really like football, it's all about college football. It's the whole day Saturday. So the whole weekend is shot with sports, right? So we got work and then we got sports. And then if we have our kids in sports, that's another thing. So what I'm seeing is that sports is becoming extreme in terms of time, money, energy, and I'm seeing that training has increased, right? Like
Right.
there's a lot of training, one-on-one training. There's a lot of mentors happening. Parents want their kids to be the absolute best, elite sports, D1. That we want to lead our kids that way. There's a lot of training in athleticism and fitness and becoming what we admire. Like in other words, every parent would love to have an all-star athlete and train them because it makes you feel good about a parent too. But if you think about what are we training them to become? Like you were training to become an athlete. Do you believe that you were training to become a son of God?
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean,
Yeah. Were you being discipled to be a Jesus follower?
yeah. I mean, in a way, right? But not.
Look
Not.
at here's a way to ask you: what was the fruit of your life in those pivotal years, the teenage years, young adult years?
Yeah.
Was it reflecting a follower of Jesus?
No.
Yeah. So, but that's what I'm saying. That a lot of people would look at you and say, "Man, I want my son to play as good as Danny," or you know what I'm saying, or to be everything you did. I want them to do. But the truth be told, there's some really difficult times that you went through, right?
Right on.
And so what does that look like? Like let's talk about some of the pros are, bro, the memories, the fun. Bro, I get it, man. The locker room, all that mess, right? All the things that the things that you see, the celebrations, I mean, we won, that feeling. You hit a home run or you hit a base hit, the winning run, the walk off, whatever. All those feelings are great, but let's talk about the dark side, the shadows that come of you and sports. Like straight up, was sports your God?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did
Unfortunately,
yeah, unfortunately, right? Did it become your God? In other words, an idol.
an idol. Right.
So how did that idol leave you? Did it satisfy you at the end of the day?
No.
What did it take from you? So what does that look like?
Um, temporary.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it can go away,
Right.
and it's like, well, now what?
So your dream was to make it to the big leagues, right?
Right. Dream was to make it to the bigs, and then you start getting older, and towards the end of your career, you start facing reality, and you're like, all right, now what? So then you start coaching, and then that ends because you start having kids, and you're like, all right, what do I need to prioritize here? And then you start feeling like a hole, like there's a hole,
Emptiness.
there's something empty, yeah, there's something missing. But that's because you're missing out on what's important, right? I mean, you're missing out. You're not filling yourself with what's important and
true.
what's in what's forever, right? And what's everlasting. And it's like, man, it's funny now when I think about it, how I went through these like years of regret or like, man, I wish I'd have just worked a little harder. I wish I would have had a little, better work ethic. I went through that for so long, but because I was still trying to find which I thought was my identity, which was baseball, and that was wrong, right? So of course I was never going to feel fulfilled. I was never going to feel satisfied. It wasn't until I realized, I'm finding out what my identity is now within Christ.
Yeah. No, that's huge, bro. Because we've all seen greats like Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods, that they eventually crash. They eventually hit a wall because their identity wasn't what they were doing, their abilities, and they become machines. And those are the people we see that are at the top. That they eventually crash because they're like, man, identity crisis. Even prime time. Deion Sanders created this pseudo prime time, and he had an identity crisis. He wanted to kill himself. And so when suicide in those dark moments, that what that looks like, it's different. It's a person driving drunk. That's a suicidal thing to do. Like, why would you drive when you're under the influence? That's what Michael Phelps did. Tiger Woods has done the same thing. He almost killed himself. Um, he's not going to say that. He could say he's been medicated or whatever. But the truth is that, he was. You get to a point where you're just like, I'm going to sabotage this pseudo fake. This is not real. Like, I'm more than a. If all you are is a baseball player and you've trained your whole life to be one, that supersedes being a son of God. That's terrible, right?
Right.
If that becomes priority over being a husband, that becomes a priority over being, a man of God, a son of God, a husband, a father. To me, that's the danger of sports, is when it becomes God.
Right.
And when you compare the two, right? Like one of the things that we've been saying around here is training in righteousness. Like, we have to train, and so training means training. It means discipline. It means practicing. It means, and you understand that terminology because you've trained all your life, and you still train now. You still go to the gym and you take care of yourself, but you're thinking that way, so that translates with you. But when you think about how much training goes into developing a son of God, a woman of God, a daughter of the King, compared to all the training that's going into a sport, whether it's football, soccer, baseball, whatever sport it is, gymnastics, whatever, the scale is so lopsided, bro. Yeah. Right?
Right.
You just said earlier that you went to church when it rained. So you went to worship God when it rained. And so that was what you gave. That's what you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And parents do that right now. I was talking to a couple and I asked them how, during baseball season, their son is in select. I said, how often do you guys go to church? And this is not someone from Tree of Life. I wanted to get their perspective. And they said, when it rains. And I'm like, how does that sound? Like, listen to what that sounds like. Yeah. We go to worship God with our family when it rains. But every other Sunday, we go and play a sport, and we're training our kid that's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a tough topic for me, man, because I went from, you'd asked me just a couple of years ago, and I was all about it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I start to realize how important I'm in this new season where I'm all about leading my girls to Christ, leading my children to Christ, and I realize that starts with me.
Absolutely.
So it's real hard because I got all kinds of friends, and I'm like, man, they're gonna listen to this and be like, traitor, because well, I'm all about. Before I'd be like, bro, yeah, get them in there, bro. They got to start training. You got to get them right, and it's like, well, why are you doing it? And it's like,
what's the big why, right?
Right. What is your reason to do this? And is it, what's your why? Like, what's your why? And it's funny because half the time it doesn't even make sense, or it'll be like, oh, well, maybe they can get a scholarship, or it creates this or it creates that, and it's like, you know what, dude? It's like, you can play sports. I love it, and I'm not saying stop playing sports, because you can glorify God all day, every day, whether on the field, on the court, wherever you're at, on the mat. Like, you can glorify God, and you can do that. But there's also becoming, there's a line there where, are you making this your God? Yeah. Like you said, and it's like, is this your idol? And what are you teaching your kid? Because now you're out there every weekend or every other weekend, and at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, dude, your kid is only going to follow what they see, right? Yeah. So they believe it, and at that age, they're thinking, this is it. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am. Yeah. I'm a baseball player. Like, that's what I am. That's what I believe that I am. So the older they get, it's like, what was your life like? It's like, oh man, it was all about baseball, or it was all about football, or it was all about this. And it's like, is that what we want to do? And it was like, man, is that really what I want my daughter to think? Because I had her in select. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, do I really want her out there, missing all this church for her to think, man, it's softball. Like, what does my life look like? And it's like softball, and then it's church, right? Yeah. Or then it's God, and it's like, man, it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can still play sports, but you don't have to, prioritize that over what's really important. And what are you teaching your kid that's important? Because it falls on the parent. I mean, at the end of the day, it's very rare that a kid's like, I want to play, and the kid's like, and the parents like, I don't think you should, like, you know, or whatever. It's like, no, the parent wants to do it, but the parent's pushing it, and they're pushing it more and more and more because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
And everybody else is like, oh, now they're doing training and they're doing personal training. They're practicing 5-6 days a week. It's like, man, we got to do that. You know, they're seeing social media and seeing everybody else work hard. And I got my kid in 5 or 6 sports in one season. Like, what the heck, dude?
What are we doing?
What are you doing for your own mental health as well? Like, are you even capable to lead your kid right now? Because you're so stressed out. Your work, you know, you're stretched out everywhere. You got your kid in all these sports and all these practices and all this. And it's like, where are you at?
Right.
Are you even capable to lead them right now?
Exactly.
And it's like you're doing way too much for what?
Right. Exactly.
Why? Be because it's 0.5%. It's not even 1% that gets drafted to the MLB. 0.5, a half a percent that gets drafted.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, what if my kid's that 1%, right? And it's like, is that worth it? You know, it's tough, man.
It's really tough when you ask why. It reveals the reason. And if it's because of a scholarship, there's all kinds of scholarships they can get. They can get academic scholarships, or it's not a good enough reason. And I'm saying that because it's very rare for them to get a full ride. And they have to be really, really good, and it's very rare. But whatever that full ride is, if you really want them to go to college, you can start a fund and fund it. You know, start funding it. Everything you spend. Think about all the money you spend on a sport, whatever sport it is, even if it's select or travel sports. There's a lot of finances involved. If you took that and you invested that over time, you're going to have a small fortune. Yeah. That would be a huge blessing to your child, however they choose to invest it, if it's in college or buying them a house or whatever. So that's not a strong enough why in comparison to eternity. It's not a strong enough why in comparison to I'm training a child to be a son of God, a daughter of the King, to be a husband, to be a wife, to be a mother, to be a father, to be a blessing, right? To be, I'm training them to live righteously, to follow Jesus. That is the greatest calling on our lives as fathers, as parents, is to train them in the way of the Lord. And that's what's important. So however we train them, if we train them with grace and love, if we train them to be athletes, and that's the priority, they're going to do the same thing with their kids when they have kids. They're going to follow the cycle. And before you know it, you'll have godless generations. Because if it's not important to gather to meet, to worship God, and to study His Word, and this is going to sound very biased because I'm a pastor. It's going to be like, yeah, you had Danny on here because you're a pastor and you want... No, I'm trying to wake up what's happening. Like, I want people to be aware that there's a stream, there's a current, and that people are on, and it's almost like, man, we're indoctrinating our kids to prioritize sports, whether it's money. If somebody was doing that with money, I'd be like, money is a terrible god. Sports is a terrible god. It's a game, it's competition, and it's fun category. So it's God, it's my marriage, it's my girls, it's my work. And it's my family, extended family, and it's my friends, and then it's fun. Fun should be like way down there, and sports to me is on the fun category. It's not above my family, it's not above my work, it's not. But when people are doing it and they're placing it really high on the scale, and the return on their investment is terrible because it doesn't produce God. Unless, here's the thing. Let's say you're a father and you're like, man, I've been praying about my son, my daughter, and God showed me that they're going to be pro athletes. Hey, if you really sincerely prayed that, because I prayed that for my daughter, my second born, she's 13. I'm looking at the time, man, because I know we got to run. I was looking at, so I prayed about my daughter. She's 13, and she's an athlete. She's natural. And I asked the Lord, is she to become a pro athlete? And the Lord said no. And I prayed more than once. I said, Lord, if she's a pro athlete, I need to get her into select. I need to get her trained. I need to do all these things. And the Lord said, that's not her future. And I sincerely prayed that, bro.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so now I have peace about not putting her in select. I have peace about not, making that top priority because I know that's not who she's becoming. Does she play sports? She does. She's going to continue to play sports, but it's not extreme. It's not priority. It's her academics are first. You see what I'm saying? Like she's doing that first. Church is first for her. Being not the church for religious purposes. No, I want her to know God, bro. And as a parent, I think we need to do a part 2 for this, bro. Seriously, because I think this is really good. But as a parent, we've been entrusted to raise children for God. I want that to sink in. Your children have been entrusted to you for Him.
Yeah.
That's huge, bro.
Yeah.
They're not for us.
Yeah.
My kids are not for me. They're for God. Everything is for Him. It's for Him, for His glory. And if I think that think about how twisted that sounds, that I'm raising my kids to fulfill my dreams. Not that God is not. We were created to have a relationship with God. Like God wants a family. He wants a family, bro, because He's a blesser. He's good. And if I'm not leading my children in a way that I have the example, but if I'm not leading them to the source of life, they're going to be depleted from it, man. They're not going to have peace and everything that they need from God. But more importantly, eternity is at stake.
Right.
Yeah. So any last, we'll do a part 2, bro. But just to close this episode up, is there anything that you wanted to say that was triggered? Because I know there's a lot.
It's too much, really.
Yeah.
I mean, but I do love that you said that you prayed about that, because I think that's funny that you can ask anybody that you ask, why are you doing so much select or travel ball or whatever? And
did you pray about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how many have answered, "Oh, God revealed that to me," right? Or how many have even prayed about it? You know what I mean? So, just pray, man. Pray about it. Ask God to show you what it is, but you got to build that relationship with God so that answers like that can be clear.
Yeah.
And it starts with you. Starts as a parent. Starts as a father.
Exactly.
Lead your household the right way. So. I mean, I'm excited. If you want to keep talking about this, I can. So.
Yeah, we'll have another episode for this. But for the meantime, here's the thing: when something is an idol, when it demands priority, when you organize your life around, when it becomes first, and I'm just going to be honest. If you look at the calendar and you look at the year, how many times do you gather with your family to worship God? And it's not about one location. Wherever you are, is it a priority for you to gather and to lead your people to God? Think about how many times that happens compared to how many times you're gathering around sports,
practice, and training,
training, the viewing, the conversations, the fantasy sports, the radio talk. Think about everything you invest into something that's not eternal versus that which is. And that should tell you if it's an idol or not. And this is something you have to process and you have to be aware of and be honest with yourself. Because if unfortunately, if it's an idol, that's first of all, it's breaking the second commandment and the first commandment. And unfortunately, it's not going to be good in the long run. And that's the fear of the Lord speaking. I'm saying that because I feel like a trumpet, man, that has to sound the alarm to say, wake up. Like, we have to be careful. And this specific topic, we're leading our kids astray.
Yeah, we need to hear
with
it,
a good thing. It's a good thing that's become a God thing, and that's the problem. So we'll continue. Danny, we'll continue. We need to do part 2, bro, because I think this is really a hot topic. And also, I love talking sports, too. It's funny because it's like a love, but I have I love sports, but not more than God. Right. So anyway, blessings, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
All right.